Like that. It's like that episode of Motherhood.
Welcome to the Partner Up Podcast. I'm Sergio.
And I'm Kimberly.
And spoiler alert, it's a girl.
No, we have a special guest.
We do.
Well, not even like special edition.
I mean, I think she just switched seats, to be honest.
Yeah, she technically was in the same area.
She's been in all of our episodes so far, including the test episodes.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true.
So, Kimberly, how did it go? Did it?
Well,
I'm sure everyone, all like 78 of our viewers, are all anxious to hear how it went. How was your experience, and what should they be expecting?
Well, it was interesting because if you guys saw our episode about my pregnancy, we had a little bit of disclaimer there at the beginning that things did not go as planned. And that we should have realized that might have sounded a little negative. I got some text like, is everything okay? Like, wait a minute. It wasn't negative.
There was some concerned people.
Yeah. It was actually very positive. So I guess I'll just jump into the story. And then I want to also hear your point of view because you were in it with me, as the people will
let's just say I wasn't expecting so much participation.
Yes.
I thought I was just going to be a cheerleader. They threw me in the game.
Yeah. Like I was the quarterback. Wait, what's the better one? Quarterback or running back? You were like this.
I was like a lineman.
Yeah.
Just like in middle school.
Yeah, definitely.
I definitely was a lineman.
So,
but let's bring some context to the people.
Yes. So I'll start from the day before I gave birth. So we went to the doctor the 15th, and I had it was my very last appointment, and my induction was supposed to be the following Monday, the 20th. And I remember going, and I was only 1 centimeter dilated, and the doctor's like, "Oh, do you want me to do a membrane sweep? Do you want to go get induced like now or?"
What is a membrane sweep?
It's basically where they go and they like touch like part of your mucus, and it can basically kickstart labor because it's like they mess with like your uterine lining and not the lining, like the mucus plug that's there. Mm-hmm. That's basically protecting the baby from like any fluids or anything that may disturb them in the birth canal. I think I could be wrong. And disclaimer: this is not medical advice. This is just what I went through and what I see. This is just my experience. So let's also disclaim that so people aren't like, oh, this is exactly.
They don't know what they're talking about. I mean, we're just talking about what our experience was like.
Yeah. So I said no to the membrane sweep. I said no to the early induction. I was happy to wait until the 20th. We had plans. The next day was our godson's birthday. We were going to go celebrate his birthday, and then we were going to go out on the weekend. We had movie plans. We hadn't bought the tickets yet, thank goodness. But we were going to go on a date to the movies. My parents were going to come into town that Sunday to get ready for the baby.
And again, this was all under the assumption that we were going to have an induction.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So this is, at this point in your appointment, they wanted us to induce again.
Yeah, they want.
So how many times have we turned down early inductions at that point? At least 3, right?
Yeah. So I was full term. So the day I went to the appointment, I was 39 weeks exactly, the 15th. So I was full term, and I remember even sending a message to our families in the group chat like, she could come anytime. I'm full term. Like, she's technically ready to come out, but we're going to wait until the induction or she comes on her own. Right. When they first brought it up, because of my gestational diabetes, we were hesitant at first just because we'd heard different things about induction. I don't think induction is a bad thing. It's a good, when it's medically necessary, I think it's a very good tool because sometimes, like, the baby does need to come out early or there's some medical issue. And, I didn't run the risk of her because I think for us, we were going to run the risk of her being too big, but that wasn't the case. But we still wanted to be medically induced.
And we did have a medical necessity, right? So
yes.
For those of us just joining us for the first time, you had gestational diabetes.
Yes. And not just the risk of her being too heavy, but also like her sugars, because my fasting sugars is what I really couldn't control as that much. But that's why they had told me to get in the induction, and my doctor was the one who's going to be on rotation that weekend. So she's like, oh, I can maybe pull you in on the weekend and you can have her in the weekend. And I was like, no, I didn't tell her I had plans, that I didn't want to be induced early. I was happy to have a spontaneous labor. I will say that, even though I had plans.
Well, spoiler alert.
She came on her own.
She came on her own.
No induction needed. It was spontaneous.
No induction needed.
I got the labor I wanted. And okay, I should probably get into that. So after the doctor, we went to have an early dinner. I remember it was so nice. We came home. We filmed the last episode, the one right before this, of this podcast.
We started talking about fixing.
We almost didn't film that night, remember? We almost waited.
We were very tired.
No, let's just film. And so that night, went to bed, normal time. And obviously, when you're pregnant, you get up to pee really often. So I remember getting up to pee. It was like 2:50. I remember looking at the clock. I got up to pee, and you were hugging me, I remember. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, I'm going to get up to pee. And I, kind of pushed you off. And I remember getting up off the bed, and I felt water coming out. But it wasn't like pee. I felt like something come out. And I was like, oh, my goodness. And then I remember, wobbling to the bathroom. It was still coming out. And I remember being like, Sergio. And then I went to the toilet and it was still coming out. And then this might be a little TMI too, but it doesn't really matter. And then I sat down on the toilet and I still had to pee. So I didn't pee myself. It was amniotic fluid. My water had broke. I remember looking down and I saw my mucus plug. Again, gross, but that's what happened. Basically just like a giant booger. That's what it looks like. And I remember telling you, because you weren't really awake yet. I remember going back to the room being like, I think my water just broke. And you were like, what? And
I'm like, how do you know?
And I was like, I know because my underwear was soaked through and it was wet everywhere. It was gross because the water had just come out. And I remember being like, I didn't even get to finish cleaning. I was freaking out because I had a list of things to do in the morning. We had plans and our family wasn't here. Who was going to watch Bella? And you were like, call our family. Call them in the group chat because we have both of our families, our parents, our siblings in one group chat.
I remember you were like, no, wait. What if it's not? And I'm like, you just woke up. There's a bunch of water. Yeah. Even if it's a false alarm, our family should probably be aware.
I was worried it was a false alarm, but that, there was no way, obviously, and it wasn't. So I remember calling the group chat, and my parents, my brother, and Yeresi answered. And I told them, and I was like, I think my water broke, guys. I'm seeing, the evidence shows my water broke. And I hadn't had contractions at that point. I remember coming to the kitchen, and I was like, I should vacuum. And you were like, no, don't vacuum. Oh, and then we were on the phone with our families. My dad was like, oh, well, we'll see. My parents, I don't think were convinced that my water had actually broke. But then apparently my mom said she woke up and she was like, we're going to get ready to go. So they got ready to go and then they left. So then we hung up the phone with them. And then I remember getting out some things I needed to do. And we're pulling out I had something I needed to steam for her, a blanket. And you were like, go to sleep. All the videos show when you're in early labor, you should try to rest. And I remember trying to lay down maybe 10 minutes after my water had broke. And that's when the contractions started. And oh man, those contractions. Bruh. They don't, people prepared me, right? People told me the contractions hurt, but I didn't realize how quick they were going to come on. People were like, oh, early labor, you can sleep, you can do stuff, you can relax, you can go to the store. I've heard people say they go shopping when they're in labor, early labor, to distract themselves. No. I tried laying down, hurt. I couldn't lay down. Being on my back hurt a lot. And we had a rocker already set up.
I remember telling you to use that rocker. I'm like, if you can't lay down, sit on the rocker and see if that works.
And I put a pee pad. I put one of our dog's pee pads because I wasn't sure if I was still leaking. I had put on disposable underwear already at that point. And I was still leaking because I had to change it, I think, twice before we left.
Wow.
And I couldn't. And I had a timer on my baby app. I had a timer to try contractions. And I think they were pretty, close together, I want to say. Maybe 20 to 30 minutes. And I was able to sleep very little. And it was 2:50 right when it started. And then off and on until about 6:30, I tried to sleep. And I woke up and I told you, I said, I can't. And you had fallen asleep because you were like, if I'm going to be your partner, I need to be able to be rested. And I was like, yes, that makes sense.
There is no There is no helping if two people are going to be sleep deprived.
Yes.
So I remember I was trying to get you as comfortable as possible. Mm-hmm. And then I remember I woke up and you were like, Sergio, my water just broke. And I was like, oh my God, I need to pack my bag.
Oh, yes. You hadn't packed your bag yet, dude. Oh, that was on the list. That was on the list of things you needed to do. I remember. And so while I was like on the phone with our families, you were packing your bags, and I was over here trying to like, oh, I should vacuum, and you had just finished packing the bag, and that's when we went like, no, we need to go to bed. We went to bed. I woke up. Before I went to bed, before I sat on the lazy boy, I called the nurse line at my doctor's because I was like, do I go to the hospital? Like, I know they say you shouldn't go to the hospital right away, and it was weird because it's an automated system, and like you leave a message and then they call you back with a robot, which is kind of lame. Like, what's the point of a nurse line? Whatever.
Well, if you think about it, okay, you're a doctor, okay? You do this all the time. Yeah. There's a bunch of pregnant ladies who sometimes call you for Braxton Hicks.
Yeah.
Right? So, fun fact, those are fake contractions?
They're false labor, but they're contractions. They're real contractions.
So they're fake news contractions, right?
Basically, like it's just your body kind of preparing you. And I'd only have ever a couple of those. Like I didn't have too many of those throughout my pregnancy.
All right, cool. So so you're a doctor. You're in the middle of the night. What if you don't answer your phone? Like,
yeah,
it makes sense. I mean, I work in tech, and whenever the service goes down, they need to get a hold of everybody all at once, and they need to page us. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense that you would have to call some sort of system, and then the system would continuously page the doctor until she answers.
Yeah.
And then because I remember it wasn't even the doctor who called us back. It was
that was in the morning.
Because
it was a machine who messaged us at night, in the middle of the night.
Because you had to leave a message to the machine and be like, oh my God, and you explain your situation, and then the machine answered back. So I think what happens is
AI.
Pregnant ladies call into this machine, take the message, the doctor hears the message, and then decides whether or not she needs to escalate it, and then sends back the appropriate response without actually making contact.
Yeah, because you're going to freak out, I think. Like, you might freak out some people.
Just imagine the doctor, like, hearing, oh my God, my water just broke, everything's leaking, and I don't know if I should come in or what now.
Yeah.
And then the machine going, press 1 to direct the patient to go to the hospital. And the doctor would be like, nah. Press 2 to tell them to wait in place. And then that's eventually what happened. She pressed 2, and then the machine told us, stay and wait.
Yeah. And so it said, wait an hour, then assess, or like, then go. And so I took that as don't go to the hospital yet.
Yeah, no, me too.
Yeah, I took this don't go.
That's the whole reason I told you to lay down.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to assess whether I needed to stay awake and help you, or if we needed to both rest up as much as possible.
Yeah. So, okay. I get up at 6:30. I then message my doctor. Like, I actually, because I have a DM with her on our portal. I didn't call because she wasn't the one on call. And then maybe, because they opened at 7, the doctor. And then I was pacing. I was I had all their bags. I pulled out, because the bags were packed. I just pulled everything out to the living room. I was walking around, because walking really helped. For me personally, the contractions, walking really, really helped. Leaning on the counter, moving around, that helped. I was trying to eat too, but it was really hard for me to eat through the pain. And I got a call from the nurse, my doctor's nurse, and she's like, you need to go to the hospital already. And I was like, oh, okay. And then
because we started tracking the contractions, right?
Yes.
You have that app.
Yeah, and they were only I think at this point they were 13 minutes apart.
I know, because they told us, oh no, it's okay, you can just wait at your house.
Yeah.
And then that was it. Mm-hmm. And then we Googled, well, at what point should we go to the hospital or let someone know? And then we Googled, and the Google's the one that told us when they're about 13, 15 minutes apart.
I don't even remember what.
But I think that's the, oh damn, you're about to have a baby scenario, just head to the hospital.
Yeah.
Because that's what we ended up doing. We just went with that the Google result on it, and then waited. And then by the time we showed up, they were like, oh my God, how long have you been staying at home?
Yeah. So we hadn't left yet, and I were you were putting everything in the car. I called again my parents to tell them hey, I'm going to the hospital.
Bag was packed within 15 minutes. Okay.
Yeah. So I call my parents, call your parents, because we had your parents show up to take care of Bella right away. My parents were a lot farther away, so they were also going to start coming over. And I remember at that point, that's when the contractions, like I was in pain already. That's when they started hitting. I started vomiting up because I had eaten a protein bar and water, and I was in so much. That's when like they really hit me. I was like, oh, I progressed pretty fast, I think, for my first baby, because they always say it takes forever for your labor to like kind of kickstart and go. I mean, from 2:50 to 7:30, like I was in so much pain, and then it took us forever to like get things in the car because I was in so much pain I couldn't help you. And you were like trying to comfort me, but then to go put things in the car. So we didn't leave till like an hour later, like at 8:30. And I was like, how dilated am I? Like how, I don't even know, because like obviously I had to go to the hospital to check. So then I remember like vomiting up some more, and you had finished putting everything in the car. We finally leave at like 8:30. And then I wanted you to talk about the car ride to the hospital. And it was rush hour because it was 8:30 in the morning on a Thursday in Austin. And our house to the hospital was about a 25-minute drive.
Well, it takes
like
30 minutes to get anywhere from our house.
Yeah.
Like, no matter where you're going, it takes
Yeah.
30 minutes to get there, 30 minutes to get back. In commute, it's just an hour.
Yeah.
Because you know what? Let's not. What's the term when you dox yourself and give out your location?
Talk about. So we get in the car, and I remember you were about to put on a podcast because whenever you drive, we have a rule where whoever drives, they get to pick the music or whatever's on the radio. And I was like,
my podcast was automatically playing because it's what I have on Spotify. And to be clear, it's not my podcast.
It's
this
the podcast you listen to every day.
It's the Bernie Burns podcast, Morning Somewhere. If you like morning shows, I highly recommend it. Especially if you're a former fan of Rooster Teeth.
Free marketing. So we get in the car, and I'm like, don't put on your podcast. Not that I don't like them. It just, as you're working through contractions, like you want to be distracted, and like I think I would have been more annoyed about hearing people talk.
A contraction hit in, and at the exact same time, Bernie and Ashley laughed in the podcast, and you're like, put anything else other than that. And I was like, okay. And then I switched it over to my Mexican playlist, and you're like, yes, that's better.
Yes.
Like the accordion blasting and everything.
Yeah, because I knew I wasn't going to be the type of person in labor who needed calm. I knew I was going to need something to hype me up. Since I'm a runner, I'm very used to like when I'm in pain, when I'm working out, when I'm walking, running, I want to be hyped up. So I had already made a playlist that we'll talk about later to like kind of hype me up, music I can sing, music I can like jam to. So the Mexican playlist, Spanish playlist, songs I could sing and belt out were going to be helping me because I needed to be distracted. So we're driving.
Ay, cómo me duele, cómo me duele.
So we're driving to the hospital. There's a lot of traffic because we had to go through past 35, past Mopac. Oh my gosh!
And we're trying to have conversation.
Yes,
right?
We're trying to talk
because we're timing the contractions, and I'm trying to have a conversation, trying to distract you.
Because I couldn't even time it. You were driving, but I had to give you my phone for you to press.
Because I noticed you weren't timing them, and I'm like, we need to know because when we're going to get there, it's the first thing they're going to ask.
Because I was in so much pain. And then what happened?
So it was like 1, okay, good, 2, and then we're at the same time. I mean, we're heading to the hospital, and we're like, we need someone to take care of Bella. Family already knew. They were all mobilizing, and my parents wanted. I mean, it's a new generation, so they were like trying to feel out the situations. Like, do we go to their house? Do we go to the hospital? Like, what do they want from us? So they were just waiting, and then on the car ride is when we were talking about, we're like, okay, well, who's going to take care of Bella?
I called my parents, and then you called your parents in the car.
Yeah. So in the car, we're talking, who's going to take care of Bella? I'm like, we can just call my parents. My parents will get here. They're coming from San Antonio. Your parents are coming from the Rio Grande Valley.
Yeah.
They have a significantly longer drive. Oh, was someone getting upset?
She's just stretching.
Nice. So as we're discussing the Bella situation, we're like, you know what? I think we should just talk to my parents. And you're like, you think so? You don't think it's to her? I just need to know who's going to do it. And yeah, you really think that we should just talk to Bella or talk to your parents about Bella? Maybe they can just come. I was just looking at you like, what just happened? You just went from 0 to 100 to 0 again.
Yep.
And that was the whole car, right? Every single time you just be like, and I think we should probably talk about that business.
Yes.
What is going
on
here?
That just reminded me. So, sorry. This podcast is going to be everywhere. So, pro tip to any moms who want to take advice. This is only if you want to. I had bought my own labor and delivery gown, and I put that on before we got to the hospital. And I put on like warm-ups, fuzzy socks, and I was like, let's go. So the pro tip, I remember being in my hospital gown in the car ride, so I wanted to say that. We go to the hospital. They have expectant mother parking right at the front of the doors. This is one of the things that I had an amazing experience at the hospital. Only thing.
What hospital, by the way, in case for those home who are wondering?
St. David's North, the Women's Center.
It's located off of Mopac.
Yes.
Right by the domain. In
Yes.
case anybody's interested or it relates to you, you're having a baby and wondering our experience was what was it like?
At that hospital.
It was at St. David's Hospital.
And I've heard people have other experience, but this was just my experience.
North, right?
North, yes.
Okay.
So get there. There's no parking because it's, again, 9 in the morning at this point. Rush hour. People are getting there for appointments. People are getting there for other things.
What do you mean, Kimberly? Don't they have parking reserved especially and designated only for mothers who are coming in?
But dumb people who are inconsiderate park there. And so you had to drop me off at the door while I was having contractions and with our stuff. And people were like, oh my gosh, do you need help? And I was like, I need my husband because I refuse to go in there without you. And we're being like, I just need my husband to get here. I just need him to find parking. And then you ended up doing like the free valet parking that they had, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So we go up, we get to the desk. And since we had like a scare a few weeks ago, we knew exactly where to go, which was very helpful. And then we go, get checked in, like, okay, sit down, we'll pull you into triage right now. And I knew that was going to happen, even though I knew I was in labor at this point. We get there, I'm walking around, because again, walking around helped me, the lobby and everything. And then they call us, within maybe like, not even 10 minutes? They call us.
It was pretty quick.
It was really quick.
Well, it's because you had called your office and then you had done the pre-registration and then your OBGYN's office let the hospital know that we were already on our way.
Yes. Now I remember. Something else did happen though. We were getting our stuff because I had like 3 bags. You had like 2 bags because first baby, I had a bunch of things with me. We were going to be there for 2 nights. Whatever. I want to be comfortable. Sue me, I'm about to have a kid. And this older man, what does he say to us? He's like, oh, what did he say?
He's like, that's a lot of stuff. Because we had all the bags.
I wasn't having contractions at the time. Oh my God, if I would have been having at the time, I would have been really annoyed. And then his wife looks at him and she's like, they're just prepared, okay? I don't know what she said to him. And I was like, oh, thank you, lady, because I was annoyed. So we walk in with the nurse who's going to do the triage. And she's like, oh, so you think you're in labor? Oh my God. I was like,
oh man.
I'm pretty sure I'm in labor. Like that's what this feels like. If this isn't labor, I don't know. I don't want to know what labor
I remember
is.
I was trying to set the bags down and everything, and then she walked in, she started talking to you. So as I had my back turned to you, putting the bags down, she goes, oh, so you think you're having contractions? And I go, what did she just say? She's like, and that's when you were like, if these aren't contractions, I don't want to know what real ones are.
Yes, because it was in pain. So I had to get on this little bed, small bed, lay on my back. And I told you, laying down was extremely uncomfortable for me. And she said, okay, let me check you. Let me check if it's amniotic fluid. Stay still. We're going to put these monitors on you. And all I wanted to do was walk around because that's what was helping me progress and the pain.
And we asked them, so can we walk around? Is that an option? And they're like, oh, yeah, we have the mobile.
Yeah, but that was for when we go to the room. So they needed to check me first to verify I was in labor. And I was like, please, God, let this be labor because I don't know what this is. So then they check me. It is amniotic fluid. They check me. I'm 3 centimeters dilated, but not too bad. And then they come and they're like, oh, the doctor on call, Dr. Pepper, who we'll talk about later. Shout out to Dr. Pepper. So she comes in. She's like, oh, you're 3 centimeters. You're progressing good. He recommends, do you want to start Pitocin? And I said, no, I want to see how I progress on my own.
Right.
And
because again, they're looking at you as a chart, right?
Yes.
You're just a file to them. They say high risk pregnancy coming in, contractions, and you were already pretty far dilated.
That's 3.
You were at 3 centimeters, right? So it wasn't
on
like
my own without being induced because I was gonna go to get induced to get to 3 or 4 centimeters.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So they see this and they think, okay, let's put in the Pitocin and speed the pregnancy along.
Yeah, the labor. Yeah. So then I said no.
The labor. Sorry.
I said I want to see how I progress on my own, but we can check again in a little bit. So.
And then they ask you about the epidural.
Yes, and I said, no, I want to wait. I was in pain. I was in a lot of pain, but I was like, no, I want to wait on that as well. So then that's the triage nurse who comes and talks to us. And then our real nurse comes in, Juliana. Shout out to her.
I'll put a. Do you want us to put the picture up
We can put the
on
picture.
screen?
Yeah, we can put the picture. We took a picture with her after.
Right. Ta-da! There she is. That's Juliana Inez.
Like, honestly, if I don't know if I would have had the experience I did, if it wasn't for her, because it was, you don't know what to expect. You hear all these horror stories of all these horrible nurses and all these, horrible things, that nurses don't listen to you. Nurses are horrible. They just do whatever they want. They recommend all these things that aren't, good for you or for your body or for your baby. She was my advocate through and through because she came in and she's like, oh, I heard you didn't want to do Pitocin. That is A-okay. Like, we're going to just see, do you want a wheelchair so we can go to your room? And she's like, it's just straight down the hall. And I was like, no, I want to walk because walking helps, even if I'm going to walk slow. Mm-hmm. And she was super great. So we get to the room and she's like, are you going to want the epidural eventually? And I said, eventually, yes. I said, not yet. So we get all set up. And you know which story's coming next. We get all set up. You start setting up our things. We had brought in a Chromecast. We brought in a speaker. The Chromecast didn't work in that room for some reason, but I pulled out my speaker. We didn't turn it on just yet. And they were like, okay, we're going to get an IV set up, and then we'll do the wireless monitoring because I told them I wanted to walk around. I wanted to bounce on the ball. And they're okay. So I sit on the ball, and they start trying to put my IV in. And that alone probably took
You ever seen those little the balls that are like cactuses, and they put the needles in? Mm-hmm. That was me. That was you. They just kept pricking you over and over and over and trying to find a needle. 5
people to get my IV in. Mm-hmm. Our nurse
6 if you count the one who tried to show up and then was super late.
Yeah. So I had to get an IV to get an epidural. I knew I was going to get one eventually. And I remember thinking I didn't want an epidural. I remember being like, oh, I might go natural. But then I was like, you know what? No, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to try to do it as late as possible. Mm-hmm. And, that's every woman has to make that decision on her own. And this was just my decision. And so our nurse couldn't do it. She brought in 2 other nurses who couldn't do it.
They bring out this
machine.
The machine, that's supposed to look like the Ledix from Escape from Tarkov. And this is a vein finder. This thing that has 2 cameras. One's like a projector, the other one's like an infrared thing, and it's supposed to highlight where your veins are so you can just go and put the IV real easy. And even with that, they on both arms, they were still not able to find a vein.
And they had poked me, I think, once here. They had moved it around a lot, and then it still didn't work. Pulled it out. They did it 2 times on this arm, and then I think 3 or 4 times on this arm, in different spots and everything. And they had tried to do it in a easier place so I could move around a little bit, but because of how hard it was to find a vein, they had to do it right at the crease, which was not very comfortable while I was trying to, be in labor. So finally, the charge nurse, the lady in charge.
Oh yeah, I remember that charge nurse.
She came in and she's the one who's like, I'm going to put in your IV. And they're like, oh, do you want to use the vein finder? She's like, I don't need that.
She's like, I don't use that. I remember because she had this very it's a Tuesday and I want to go home demeanor to her. She didn't look like she was having a great time or she was already upset and it was 8 a.m. So maybe she just hadn't had her coffee, but I remember when we had to go for an ultrasound because there was a lack of movement at one point in time. She also helped us out. Yeah. And I was like, ooh, it's her. And I was like, I'm wondering how it's going to go at this point. But as soon as they were like, oh, here's the vein finder. And she's like, oh, I don't use that. And then she starts trying to find the vein again and goes, oh, but thank you, by the way. Anyway, I'm like, ooh, that attitude, I recognize it now. That's the attitude of someone who knows what they're doing. And immediately, right in.
She got it, and they drew my blood because we were doing the cord blood banking, and some of the stuff had to take my blood as well. So she got the vials that they needed to take, that we needed to store.
And then the IV lady shows up.
No, she showed up after I had her. Oh,
you're right. Yeah, no.
She showed up after I had her.
That's right. Never mind.
Yeah, no. So that was So so many people.
So the thing is, because we requested an IV, right? Because that's when they're like, "Oh, we're gonna want the epidural
For
eventually. You're
yeah.
gonna need an IV. Let's get the lady to come with."
No,
the
because
IV.
my nurse was going to do it, and then eventually, before the charge nurse came,
they requested the IV,
Yeah.
right? And then after a while, you're like, "No, I'm gonna need to go ahead and do the epidural sooner than expected. So let's go ahead and get the IV in."
Oh yeah, well they knew that because eventually.
So they kept trying to call, and I remember because I'm the one who had to call Joanna on the cell phone line. And it was like, "Hey, we're actually going to want to go ahead and get that IV in a lot quicker, so we're prepared for the epidural." And then Joanna came in, and she's like, "Okay, well or what was her name? Sorry? Juliana came in, and she's like, "Okay, well we can wait for the IV nurse." And then I looked at her and I was like, "Do you know how much longer they're going to take?" And that's when she went to go get the charge nurse because she had called in that IV lady and she never showed up.
Yeah. And so get the IV in. They do the wireless monitoring for me so I can move around, which they say a lot of times doesn't work as well. But for me, it worked beautifully the entire time. Everything just worked out great with that wireless monitoring for me. So then I'm walking around. Juliana's kind of giving us our space so I could labor, and you were there too, like, walking around. I
had your playlist going.
Oh yeah, by that point I turned on my speaker. I had my birth playlist going. I had my hype songs. I won't say them for like copyright. I don't remember all of them off the top of my head, but it was basically a bunch of like hype up music, like being a woman, being strong, all that stuff. What doesn't kill you make you stronger? That kind of music. And then I went to go labor a little bit on the toilet. Like I was just literally sitting on the toilet, like squatting down. That helped. Like leaning on you, moving around, like walking up and down the room. And then I remember leaning on, like, I think the trash can. And so at this point, I think it's like, like maybe 12-ish?
Yeah, around there.
12-ish. I wasn't eating because like I was still throwing up if I had anything to drink, like water or anything. So I couldn't eat anything, even though like I didn't have the epidural. I could have eaten something, but I literally couldn't keep it down. And I remember so I got to a point where I was in so much pain I started crying. And I remember being like, "Oh my God, I am so sorry, Mom. Like, I am a horrible daughter. I can't believe this is what my mom had a natural birth. She did not have an epidural at all." And we're just like sobbing. And you were like, "Do you want to see your mom?" Because I was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe like she went through this." And like, I was a horrible preteen and I had some of my moments, and I was like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." And you're like, "Do you want your mom to come?" Because they should have already been close to town at that point. And I was like, no, I don't want her to see me like this. Like, she's like, "Well, do you want to call her?" And I was like, "No, I don't want to talk to anyone on the phone. I'm not like, my mental state right now is not where I could have a conversation. No." And you were like, "Are you sure?" And we're just like, I was whimpering too because I was in so much pain. I was like, I think I want the epidural already. Mm-hmm. And you were like, "Okay." So that's also when you called and let them know. Like, yeah. "Hey, yeah, she's ready for the epidural." And it does take a while because I have to get the anesthesiologist in there. So I went back to laboring on the toilet. And I remember at that point, I was in so much pain. Like, at this point, I don't remember it. I would do it all again, right, for our child. But I was in so much pain.
I remember I kept trying to figure out what to tell you to, like, calm you down or to, like, reassure you. And there was, like, a bunch of things. And our nurse, Juliana was doing a great job, and she'd come to you and be like, "You're doing great, Mama. You're great. You're strong. You're pushing through this. You're doing great." And I'm like, "Okay, that's the sort of stuff." And then I would start trying to do this, and you'd be like, "Can you please just be here? Just be here." I'm like, I'm saying the same thing, and I couldn't figure out what to say. And then you were. It was towards that point in time, and you were sitting and we were in the bathroom. You were sitting on the toilet, squatting. You were just going, "You're okay. Your baby's okay. You're made for this. Yeah. You're okay. Your baby's okay. You're made for this." And then I was like, that's what I always tell you. I was like, "You're made for this." Yeah. You got to them. Like, okay. So then I started repeating that to you every time. Yeah. You would look at me and you'd be like, "I'm okay. Baby's okay. We're made for this." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And then we just kept repeating that, and that would help ease you a little bit.
Yeah. And we're just like standing up and sitting down and like leaning on you and like you saying that and me also repeating that. Like that helped me. Still in a lot of pain. And then finally, maybe like timing, I don't know how long passed. It just felt like forever. Finally, they were like, the epidural people are here. And I was like, thank God, I'm ready to go. So got on the bed, and it was a anesthesiologist with his nurse. And he asked me, he's like, do you mind if my nurse puts in your epidural? And I said yes. I know everyone is shocked.
It was the student.
Yeah, the student.
Yeah, it's like, do you mind if the student? Because the way he phrased it, he was letting you know that it was a student. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, how sneaky of him. And like, I was about to say, no, can you please do it? Because I know how like nervous you were about it. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily because of the epidural, but because you do have like some lower back issues. Yeah. So I was going to be like, no, can we just have the senior? And before I could like say anything, you were just like, yes, please, just put it, do it.
And in my head, what I thought was he's going to be watching her do it. So I would prefer her to do it, who I know she's probably like done it a few times. And he is like watching exactly where she's placing it, how she's doing all that. So I feel like I had two people putting in the epidural.
Little do you know that one student was like in the mirror. It's like, you're going to do fine. It's your first one. It's going to be okay.
Right? So we're like, you had to sit in the middle of the bed, and I was having contractions. Like contractions were really, close together at that point. And I was in so much pain, and I remember, like, I had to lean over. You had to make a C with your back, and you were sitting in front of me. And I remember telling you, like, don't drop me. Or I was like, no, you're moving. And like,
you were like, I feel like I'm falling. And I'm like, I'm literally in front of you. If you fall, like, you have to go through me. Like, you're fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, and I think the worst part of getting the epidural, because, again, like, I was scared, and people say, like, oh, it's bad. You shouldn't get it. It was amazing for me. And the worst pain was like the numbing needle. It felt like a bee. She's like, it's gonna feel like a bee sting, and I've never been stung by a bee, so it did hurt a little bit. But I was having contractions at the same time. So honestly, that bee sting was nothing. So they put it in, and I'm nervous because I have to lay on my back for a bit while it sets in. They're like, lay still, lay on your back, and they say, oh, don't lay on your back during labor. It's bad for you, whatever. And I'm laying, and then like, relief just like passes over me, like slow, maybe like 10-15 minutes. I was like, oh my god, like I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. I was like, I know some people who the epidural did not work. I know some people the epidural was not enough. For me, it was blissful, amazing. I took a nap. That's what I was about to say. Like I was able.
That's when people started calling me, trying to figure out, hey, how's Kimberly doing? Because at that point, I think all our parents, or my sisters were already at our house, and everybody was just chilling here, trying to figure.
They were doing the errand, like the chores I had. They were decorating.
You had given everybody a task list of what you needed and wanted to get done by everyone. Like, yes. The whole village came together and helped us out. And they were like, that's when they called me. And they're like, how's everyone doing? How's everything doing? Like, just want to make sure it's okay. Your brother started messaging me on the side, not in the group chat. And I was like, did they finally get the IV in? And he was real mad that they kept sticking you. And I was like, no, well, at this point, she fell asleep. We got a epidural in. She's doing great. Like, at this point, she's finally relaxing a little bit. She's getting a little break.
Before, I don't remember, and maybe you can, if you remember, if it was before or after my nap, they checked how dilated it was.
Yeah.
I was 8 centimeters dilated. I was like, hallelujah, all that pain. I made it. I labored on my own pretty well, I think, because it was from like 9:30ish when we got to our room until I think about like 2:30 or 3 when they put in the epidural. So I felt really accomplished that I was able to labor for that long. I think it was before my nap where they checked how dilated I was, or right after. I don't remember.
It was so our delivery doctor came in and introduced himself.
After my nap.
After your nap. Yeah. And he came in to check in because it was already after the epidural. Mm-hmm. So you had fallen asleep. And when the nurse checked you that you were already 8 centimeters dilated, they were like, oh, yeah. We need to let the doctor know that.
They're like, oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And he came in, he's like, oh, you're progressing great on your own. Like, that's amazing. And something, too, that's helped, I wasn't just on my back after it was just the initial time when they let the epidural set in. The nurse was great. We would change positions using a peanut ball. So, like, I would move my legs. Like, I was on my side. I wasn't just on my back. So, they were checking her heart rate and everything because sometimes babies don't like certain positions you're in. So the nurse would, like, check her heart rate and all her stuff. And then we would change, if we would change positions like 30 minutes later and, oh, she doesn't like that, her heart rate's kind of getting low, we would change back or change to a different one. And that really helped. And she knew what she was doing, because I know some people who are like, oh, it's dropping, you need to go get a C-section. But no, she was like willing to kind of work with me. So I could get into an optimal position, optimal, you know, like movement for me, like in the bed, so I could like still progress in labor, and then I make sure like she was okay. So we did that. I was able to drink juice, cranberry juice and water, which was amazing, because I hadn't had anything since our early dinner the night before after my appointment. I hadn't had anything to eat at all. And at this point, it was probably like 3 o'clock maybe. So then we're there, we're talking, my music, I'm replying to friends, because we had been talking to our friends off and on throughout the day. Well, you more than me. And so finally able to respond, look at everyone's messages, look at like what our family was saying. And then, you know, you and I are talking. I'm like, okay, like, you know, we'll see. Like, I was getting really nervous, because it's like, oh, it's going to be time soon. Like, how am I going to feel? And then they came in to check me, I think an hour-ish later, and I was at 10 centimeters, ready to push, because it was like 3:30 at this point, I think, about to be 3:30. And so then we start getting ready to push, and I remember asking the nurse, so, like, does the team come in? And she's like, no, it's just going to be you and me and your husband.
You're going to be like, when we start pushing, like, who's going to be in the room? And he's like, well, it's going to be us. And we're actually about to start pushing, so let's go ahead and get you in position. And she's like, oh, so it's, like, just you? And it's like, no. Dad, can you please go ahead and, like, grab onto the leg and hold it symmetrical just like I'm doing? I'm like, oh, so, like, she's tagging me in. It's game time. Okay, let's go.
Yeah, so we start, you know, she's like explaining to me how we're gonna do it. I was on my back, but like leaned up a little bit, and with my legs, one of my legs up, and then you were holding one of them, and then we started pushing. She'd be like, you're gonna count to 10, you're gonna push. And they did tell me,
one thing that I think helped you out a lot is you had gone to like the physical therapy, the pelvic floor
therapist,
and like they helped you out on like
pushing positions,
how to push, and like how it's supposed to be a thing.
Yeah.
I had no clue what was going on. All I know is like, can you go ahead and do some practice pushing? And she's like, great. So you're doing it great. So you already went in knowing how to push.
Yeah.
It wasn't something that was foreign. You were trying to figure out at the time.
That was very helpful going to that. Shout out to Roberta, who gave me the advice to go to that pelvic floor therapist. So I kind of had an idea of what to do. And then she explained to me what we're going to do. And then we started pushing. I felt like I wasn't doing anything. Like I felt, because I felt pressure. It wasn't painful. Mm-hmm. I definitely felt pressure. And so, you know, doing the round, and then she was on my monitors. That's when they would tell me when I was having a contraction. So we would push with the contractions, and then eventually like I could feel the pressure. Like I kind of learned as we went along, okay, this is a contraction, even though like it didn't hurt.
You started telling the doctor
the nurse,
or the nurse, when the contractions were coming, because they have like a little machine that looks like a lie detector,
and it tells them.
And it, like, I'm assuming whenever the activity spikes, it means that your muscles are contracting.
Yeah.
And she'd say, "Oh yeah, that's a contraction. Let's go ahead and start pushing." And after a while, you'd be like, "I think that's a contraction." And then she'd look and she'd be like, "Oh, yep, let's go ahead and start."
Yeah. So then I remember like I was looking up at the ceiling, and I would like see a certain spot on the ceiling, and then I would like look down, and that's when I'd be like, "Okay, I'm gonna push," and then. After a while, I don't know if it was you or the nurse who recommended it. They're like, do you want a mirror?
Yeah, I think it was me.
Because Roberta had to get told this.
Because I was trying to figure out like what would help more, and I was thinking of all the things. I remember them saying that if you could see, if you had more of a visual, it would like help connect the muscles with your vision. And
that helped me. And I thought I was expecting like a little mirror that someone was going to hold. No, she brought out like a wheeled out mirror that was really big.
I was like, do you have a mirror or anything? And I thought she was going to come in with like a compact or something. And like, I was going to be like holding it and be like, is that a good angle right there? And no, she came out with this like TV size thing on wheels.
Yeah.
It looks like, you know, TV day at school.
Yeah.
But it just like, and I remember I didn't tell any of you guys this, but like the mirror was actually broken.
Oh my gosh.
So the little nut that like holds it in place so it stays in the right angle, it just wasn't there.
Oh, that's why. But like at first I couldn't. Like I had to we had to re-angle it.
Every time we would like angle it and let it go, it would just tilt back to like straight down. So what I had to do is it had a different washer that I like manually put it in there and like twisted it, and then like I put it to the angle, and I was like, "Is that a good angle?" You're like, "Yeah." I'm like, with my like the sleeve just trying to keep it as tight as possible so that I would keep it on there.
Yeah. Yeah, so that helped me a lot because I think at first, like, I feel like I wasn't progressing, like, pushing, but the nurse was like, "Oh, you're doing great." And then the mirror helped, and then she's like, "Do you want to feel her head?" Because we could, in the mirror, I could see her hair, all her hair. I could see her, and then I was like, "Okay." And then she guided my hand, and I could feel her. I felt her head, and she's like, "Come on, like, you got this."
And that's when she's like, "Okay, I think it's time we call the doctor."
Yeah, because when I had the mirror and I was able to feel her, that sounds like, okay, I felt like you said, like, it connected it more. So when I pushed, I was pushing more efficiently.
Right.
So then they call the doctor to come in, and we'll talk. Okay, do you want to talk about Dr. Pepper real quick before we continue with the birth story?
So it's funny because I kept thinking of like, all right, how, I was going to make a joke on his name because he's Dr. Pepper.
Yeah.
It's like, is it going to be like a Beatles joke, Sergeant Pepper or Dr. Pepper, the soda, and I was trying to think of the joke. And then he came in to introduce himself when they would just finished putting, after your nap and your epidural. And he's like, "I am Dr. Pepper." He had this hoodie or this like zip up jacket. He's like, "I'm Dr. Pepper, and I'm gonna be your delivery doctor today, and everything looks good." And I'm like, "Hey, Doc," and I was about to say, "Oh, a joke about his name," and then I see his jacket and it says UTRGV Doctors Hospital at Renaissance, and I was like, "Is that UTRGV?" And he's like, "Yeah. Do you guys know that?" I'm like, that's where I graduated.
We're from the valley.
And he's like, "No way."
Yeah.
So it's like just everyone from the valley just gravitates towards each other.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was a story I forgot to say right after my epidural. So anyway, so he comes in, he's like scrubbing in, he's getting his stuff on, and like I feel the need to push. Like it.
And the nurse is like, "Okay, hold on. She didn't want to tell you not to push because you're not supposed to hold it." And I remember just seeing the nurse go, "Okay, well, let's hurry up." And then the doctor comes in and he comes in like chill. He's like, "Hey, ready to have a baby?" He's got this, the doctor like confidence. And he turns around and sees like the head is almost already halfway out. And he's like, "Oh, okay, we got to hurry up." And he like picks up the pace, and the nurse is like holding her hand under like you just to make sure, and I'm like, I'm having like flashbacks to stories my dad would say, because she said that my dad said that when my mom was in the same situation with Iresi, the doctors took forever. Iresi just came out, and my dad had to be the one who picked her up because nobody wanted to touch her. So I was seeing that, I'm like, oh my god, is this gonna happen to us? But no, he scrubbed in, he got right on there, took position, and was ready to go.
I think after he got there, it was like one more push or two more.
It was
pushes?
like 2 pushes.
And then.
So in my head, I don't know what I was expecting. I honestly don't know what I was expecting. I thought I was going to be like, oh, the head is coming out, and then like half the head, and then like the neck, and then the shoulders. And I thought it was going to be this like progressive thing we were going to get to see. And no. Absolutely not. It was like the doctor went in. He's like, "Okay, we're ready. Everything looks good. Let's go ahead and give me one big push." And all the baby's out. And then he puts the baby, or Odelia, on your chest. And you're like, oh my God. And I'm like, that's it? That was it? Like, oh my God. I was in shock. I was not expecting it to just be like...
We had like another
down
hour.
said, height, and put her on you. Like, that was it.
Yeah. And I remember just thinking like, oh my God. I remember hearing the story of this mom's labor and delivery, and she says like, it's a weird feeling because the doctor comes, he's like, give me one big push. The baby just slides on out, and then they just plop him on your chest. And that's what they did. And it was, I remember thinking, I obviously started crying. I was very emotional because I was just so happy because I felt really good still. Again, it was just a lot of pressure. So it wasn't painful like her actually coming out. Right. And it was just such a beautiful moment. We were looking at you and like looking at everybody because they were like cleaning her, making sure she was like, breathing okay. I heard her start crying, and I was just crying because I was just so happy. And I was just like, oh my God. I was just so excited because 9 months she was with me, grew inside me, and it was just such a surreal moment. Because there's some moments when you're pregnant, it doesn't feel real. You know, you feel the baby kick, you see the heartbeat on the monitor, you see the sonogram pictures. But in the moment where, like, they come out and you actually hold them, you're like, oh my goodness, like, this doesn't feel real. And she had so much hair.
Yeah.
Like, I had a lot of heartburn early on in my pregnancy. So I was like, I should have expected this, but it was just so much hair. I was not expecting this much hair. And she's kept most of it. But yeah, she had a lot of hair. And then at that point, I'm just like happy, blissfully, like holding her, hearing her cry, like knowing that she's okay. And then you...
I mean, we the family as well was really concerned. I was like, "It's go time," and it would be like, I can see the head's like how we're.
I can't believe you were like basically giving him a play-by-play.
I was, because I know both of our families, and if I didn't keep them like up to date, they were just going to be concerned and pacing this room. Like the amount of anxiety that was just like circling this general area of our house, I imagine was palpable. Yeah. So I was just giving them that, and then I thought, like, I know they're going to want to like know that you are okay, one, and two, that the baby's okay. So like quick thinking, I'm like, obviously I know you're not going to want recording your business at the time.
I was pretty naked at that point.
Yeah, so at that point I was like, you know what, audio. Like I heard the baby crying. I'm like, that's what they're going to want to hear. If they hear the crying, they're going to know that everything's okay. So I took out the Signal app, I put the voice memo, and then send them that audio.
Yeah, we're listening to it later. But yeah, like, you were able to cut the cord. Right?
Yeah, at that point they asked us, it's like, oh, what are we doing? And we were doing the delayed cord clamping.
A little bit delayed cord clamping.
So we called the company and it's like, what is the procedure? They're like, no more than 90 seconds.
Yeah.
So I look at the doctor and said, they told us a minute and a half. And they're like, oh, well, it's been exactly a minute and a half. And they're like, okay, cool. So they clamped it. And then they're like, who are you going to want to go ahead and cut the cord? And I'm like, sure, let's go, I'll do it. And
I remember just like kind of hearing that, but I was just like in a blissful state, so like I don't really know what was going on. And then
they're like, oh, so we're doing delayed cord clamping, or are we collecting and everything? So
yeah,
like, are we keeping the placenta? Are we keeping the exosomes, the blood cells, and all that? So then we got the kit, and he started collecting everything.
Mm-hmm. And I remember he asked me, he like felt the placenta. And then he's like, how does it feel? And then it like came out. So I was like, he's like, oh, there it is. And I didn't see it.
Oh, I got to see it.
How was that? Like, oh, baby. How was that? How was seeing and helping your wife give birth to your first child for you? Like, how, obviously we've been talking about my experience and beautiful. I would do it. If I had the exact same experience, I would do it 1,000%. Again, exactly the way I had it. But how was it for you?
I just wanted to make sure you were okay, and I felt like I just kept getting in the way. I don't know. I'm a big guy, so like I always feel like no matter where I go, I'm in the way. But I would just like follow you and make sure that you were okay. So for the majority of the time, it was just making sure that you were okay. So I wasn't going to be asking you, hey, you want me to tell your parents this or anything like that. I was just making calls on the side, like letting.
I didn't even notice.
Yeah,
no. You were there. You were very present with me when I was
trying to make sure like you wouldn't see me on my phone. That's what I was trying to.
It was the bug that was flying around.
Oh yeah, I was trying to make sure that you were okay. That was my main priority. And then when it came time to push, when the coach put me in and told me that we're gonna get ready to push. I was like, okay, I mean, it's holding up your legs, just keeping you at an optimal angle. Started, the engineer in me took over, making sure that the angle is optimal for delivery and all of that. And I grew up with unrestricted access to the internet in the 90s, like most of my generation. So let's just say I've seen gore. So I wasn't necessarily phased.
That bad.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, that was just my experience.
There was one point when like blood started coming out, and I think it was like with the placenta and everything else. Yeah. And for the most part, everything was like normal skin tone-ish, nothing big. But then like the bright red blood, visual came out. So trigger warning, and like that's when I started getting concerned, and I was like,
that's normal.
I haven't seen that at all. up until just now. And I go, is that normal? And it was, oh yeah, no, that's fine. I'm like, okay, cool. As long as you guys say so, because I've heard of internal bleeding, and I just want to make sure that that's not that.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're like, no, that's normal. We're all good.
Yeah.
And then the placenta came out. I don't remember seeing the placenta getting delivered.
You just saw it on the floor?
I just saw it like on the table.
On the table.
Because they had like the little,
the catcher.
The Grey's Anatomy little like instrument metal tray that they put it on. And the best way I can explain it is if you've ever gone to the meat market to buy fajita.
Oh my gosh.
That's what it looks like. Except fajita usually like has like because it's like a little membrane, and the inside just looks like flesh, right? The only difference is the fajita's red, and this was just like bluish purple. So, a thin plastic bag filled with flesh is what it looked like.
Interesting. Well, yeah, that was our labor and delivery story, and I think, our nurse Juliana, Dr. Pepper, like they were really great. I'm sad that my doctor didn't get to actually deliver her because I did see her for the whole entire time, but I really like Dr. Pepper. So I was pretty happy.
It's so ironic. She kept trying to induce and telling you, hey, this weekend, let's induce when she would be able to deliver. And then
she didn't get to deliver. I wanted a spontaneous delivery, labor, and I got what I wanted. I got the epidural, but I got it later. And I pretty much got the labor story and delivery I wanted, which was really special to me because it's my first baby. We don't know what the future holds, hopefully if and when we have more kids, what that will be like for me. But, if it's similar or like this one, I would do it without hesitation. Not right away, obviously, but I would do it again, even with gestational diabetes and all that. So postpartum, we won't talk about too much, but the hospital was great. They did those what is it? The fundal massages where they basically massage my uterus. Those hurt. Those were annoying, but nothing compared to the contractions. Still nothing's going to compare to the pain of those contractions before my epidural. That honestly, that was hard. That was really hard. And it took us a while. It was towards the end of the day. Towards the end of the day, it was shift change-ish because she was born at 4:48 p.m. And it takes time. We have to wait for 2 hours, and then they have me get up and walk and make sure I'm doing good. And then at that point, it was already going to be shift change, so it took us a little while to get to the postpartum room because they were going to move us rooms. And our nurse Juliana was gracious enough to let our parents come and see us.
Yeah, because we're going to be in the delivery room longer than usual because of the shift change. Mm-hmm. So they're like, usually we would have just moved you in, but you're going to have to be here an hour or two extra.
Longer, yeah.
It was 3 hours we were in there.
I know.
Extra.
Yeah.
Not the delivery time. It's the baby there. We're just chilling 3 more hours, and then they moved us into the postpartum room.
Yeah. So I told their parents to come, I think a little bit after, and I said, be close by the hospital because we're not sure what exactly it's going to be.
I just remember, Yedesi showed up. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go outside. So I grabbed what Yedesi had brought because it was what her task was. And I come in and it was flowers. Mm-hmm. And you're like, yay, but we're ready for the food. And I
was starving.
Oh, okay. So I call Melanie and I go, hey, Melanie, where's the food? And she's like, I'm so sorry, but what is this traffic? I just don't understand how no one's moving. I'm on the highway, but no one's moving. And I'm like, yeah. And I remember because at this point, the nurses were getting blood and vitals and everything from Odelia. So they were listening into the conversation. And I go, yeah, well, it's okay. Don't worry. Welcome to Austin. Traffic is our thing. We pride ourselves on it. Yeah. It's sort of what we do around here.
Yeah. Yeah, so they brought me food. Thank goodness, I was starving.
So you got your sushi. What'd you get?
I felt nauseous because I was so hungry after I got sushi. I got a little bit of cake. I got some gummy bears.
I remember everyone was getting all the stuff that you asked for, right? And I called Melanie. I'm like, "Are you getting me something too, right?" And she goes, well, I'm getting myself Whataburger right now. Do you want me to get you something from there? I'm like, that would be great. I know I'm not having the baby, but I would also appreciate food.
Yeah, because they didn't give you the dads only get one meal the entire time they're there at the hospital, so you didn't get anything.
Yeah.
So our parents, Juliana graciously went to go get our parents from the lobby to come meet Odelia and see us. And I just remember, like, you were doing skin to skin with Odelia at the time, and I was just chilling in the bed. And I remember my mom coming up to me, like, it was just such a surreal feeling, like seeing my mom after having my own child was like one of my favorite moments. Yeah, one of my favorite moments, besides obviously, holding her for the first time and hearing her cry, but just like being able to just like be with my mom, like as soon as it happened afterwards, just being like, I'm sorry, I was a shitty teenager. I can't believe I did that to you, and you went through this for me. So yeah, like that was just such a nice moment being able, because I was like, oh, I don't want to wait till the next day to see our parents. I wanted to see them right after. So I was just so happy they let them come to the delivery room, because normally they don't do that.
And then, I mean, another thing I remember I was thinking, is we were only supposed to have 3 people besides me, because I'd be the 4th person in there, right? And they allow 4. And I was like, the thing is, in Mexican households, favoritism is like a big deal. You have to like navigate very carefully. So if we bring in one parent but not the other set of parents, and someone's not going to be upset. Do you think we can maybe get both the sets of grandparents in at the same time so no one gets offended? And she's like, oh yeah, no worries.
Yeah, and I was really glad.
And then she's like, which one are they? And then I think
we issued a picture.
Yeah, both sets of our parents took a selfie when they were just like waiting to see what's going on.
Yeah.
And then we're like, oh, and we showed it to her, and she's like, oh, that's so nice. All your parents are just waiting. So she looks at us and she's like, what do they look like? Like, what are they? She goes, you know what? I remember from the selfie. I'm gonna go find them. And she just like bounced.
And my parents said, like, she looked at them. She's like, you guys come with me. Like, she recognized them from the picture, and she's like, okay, you guys come with me. So they got there, and then obviously your parents were there, and it was just so nice. Like, they didn't hold her or anything since you were doing skin to skin, but they got to, like, see us, make sure we were doing good and that she was doing good. And then they were only there for, like, I think 15 minutes or something, because at that point it was already almost 8, I think. And then we just hung out. We started packing up the room. I tried breastfeeding, and it's been going good. So there too, it was going good. And then we moved rooms. It was 2 floors down, and then we got settled for the night.
Yeah, and then the real trauma began when I had to try to sleep on that couch.
The pain you must have gone through. I mean, I don't understand that. I'll never understand that pain.
I know. It's something that only husbands and significant others can relate with.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so sorry. You had to.
Unfortunately, it's something you won't ever get to experience. But I just want you to know that emotionally, and mentally, that hospital bed is definitely something that we all have to try to get through.
Yeah.
But it's okay because we do it out of love for our kids.
Yes. Yeah, but I mean, the rest of the time at the hospital was good. Breastfeeding was going pretty good. Everything, our stuff was good. Her sugar was a little low at first, but then after, feeding a little bit more, she was good. My blood sugar was also good. She had a little bit of fluid because she came out too fast, they said. I pushed for a little under an hour, and they said she came out too fast. So she had a lot of fluid in her lungs the first night or two, so they had to go, like, suction it. And we never left her, I remember. Like, the first night you had slept, and then I went with her to get suction, and then the next night you went with her to get her, do some testing, and then to do her bath, her little sponge bath. And I needed to sleep.
You were like, I've seen enough true crime to know that babies can get switched, so we're not leaving her side.
Yes.
So you had me waking up at like 3 a.m.
I was like, go with her.
Go with her. Okay, yeah, I'll go.
And I ended up taking a nap, which was really nice. And then we got to go home on Saturday morning. Or Saturday, it was right before noon. We got to go home.
That's
It was
right.
great. And then Friday night, our friends got to come see us. Elizabeth and Brandon, they came. And Odelia shares a birthday with our godson, Leon.
That's
So
right.
Friday night, they came to see us.
They're birthday twins.
Birthday twins, yes.
So now we better get that Disney cruise ready.
Yeah. And then we came home and our family had, cleaned up everything, had made decorations for us. My parents went to get us groceries. We ordered pizza that night. Some of our friends came over, and it was just such a beautiful experience. I don't think anyone else I've known has had such a good experience, and I'm so blessed to be able to say that we've, we waited a little bit longer to have kids compared to our friends. And we went through a lot of things, I think, before we had children, but
I do want to say thank you to our friends, though, because they went through a lot having their kids. Mm-hmm. And based on their experience, we were able to learn a lot.
Yes.
So I would say that we were definitely in a privileged position because we were able to learn from what they went through.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. Yeah. And now we have her. And then for 2 weeks after, my mom stayed with us and took care of us. And that was amazing. Like, shout out to my mom, because I don't think we would have had the same experience postpartum that we continue to have if it wasn't for her.
For me, that was the best part as well, being able to come home. And I was mentally preparing myself for supporting you and doing whatever it is that you needed to be able to be with the baby. And when your mom came and stayed with us for these 2 weeks, she was just taking care of everything that I felt like, what am I supposed to do? And she's like, no, you get to spend time with the baby too. So anytime you weren't holding her, I got to hold her too. And I got to spend a lot of time with her as well.
Yeah.
And that's something really nice, because that's not something I was expecting to be able to get. I was expecting to have to, be helping and you around the house with anything that you needed.
Yeah. And I think, there's a lot of, in society nowadays, people are like, oh, you need to be on your own, alone, don't have visitors. But for us, that, I thought I was going to want the same thing, but it was so nice having people over, the first few days, and then having my mom stay for 2 weeks. And, she told me that she learned that from my grandma, who I was really close to when she was alive. So to me, it's like we're passing on the tradition, because now when my kids have children, I want to be able to do that for them. Then I feel like it's a part of my family tradition now. Our family tradition is your mom can go and take care of you. Yeah. And I just think that's really beautiful, because, not a lot of people have that. People I know, they don't have, their moms don't want to go help them, or they can't because of work or them not being close by or whatever. And my mom was able to take time off work and come and help us and just be with us and bond. And it was such a beautiful time for me. So I would say to, again, advice if you want it to be, but if not, it's just me talking, accept the help. Because I think there's a lot of times when you're a new mom, you want to be able to do it because you want to be able to prove it to yourself and your husband and to others. But I was super glad to take that help.
Great. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us on episode 6 and helping us say hello world to Odelia.
Yes. Thank you.
We'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
I'm Sergio.
I'm Kimberly.
And we'll see you on episode 7. Bye.